We are Common Ground Mom Meals Edition, and this is our holiday event. So we are going to be cooking really tasty things for your holidays. So my name is Jen Whitmer. I am a speaker and a coach. I am in St. Louis, Missouri. I have 4 children who are all not here right now. So I'm enjoying waving at yours if they are with you, but mine are, they're out at piano lessons. And unfortunately, they really demand food like every day. And I'm just trying to feed them just like you. So I love working with Common Ground. They're one of my favorite organizations to do this type of work with. And so I want to tell you a little bit about them. Common Ground is an amazing organization of farmers. They are 200 plus women volunteer farmers who really want to help consumer moms understand where their food comes from. And so they know how food is raised, they know how food is grown, and they are really on a mission to get rid of that mom guilt. So feeling guilty and not knowing where to get information from, Common Ground farmers are here to help you. And so as a mom, we all know that we've got all kinds of things on your plate, and worrying about food is the last thing you want on that plate. We just want to get it together and help our kids grow and have really nourishing meals. And these farmers know how to do that, and they know where your food comes from. And so they're a wonderful resource. And they're here to help you. And so they've put on events like this. And tonight, well, we're going to say goodbye to mom guilt in a very specific way. So before we talk about that, I have a few housekeeping items. So make sure that you're on mute. You should already be on mute. If you want to turn on your camera, we would love to see your face. I love the jammies and the glasses and the drinking of the smoothies. I see that smile. And oh, look at your cute little glasses. So great. We love to see you. If you have questions while you are thinking of them, please put them in the chat. We might be able to get to them while each farmer is on, but we definitely will be able to get to them at the end. We're going to have a Q&A session for you to ask the farmers questions. Right before we have what is probably my favorite part of the evening, a giveaway, and we have a wheel to spin with all your names on it. So stick around for that, because you do have to be present to win. And so generously provided by the Texas organization of Common Ground. And these Texas family businesses, you have a prize package of Farm Partners coffee from Purpose Coffee, Mackenzie Child's cutting board and hand towel from Be Whimsy, and Yoder Cello's Pinot from Vingo Vineyards. I'll say that right, Vingo Vineyards. So make sure you stick around for the giveaway at the very end. So tonight, I just really have to admit to you that this time of the year, I get really tired of cooking, like, you know, the whole plate of food and setting the table with the forks and the knives and all of the pieces and drinks. And I'm like, can't we just have cereal? And so sometimes it's really great to have just appetizers. The kids think it's something fun and different, but I also wanted to have something more than like a pizza roll. So tonight we are making some meals like that. And it's also fun to have a sparkly beverage. And so we've got another fun beverage for you tonight as well. And we have these farmers. I think we're going to get to see all of these farmers. Yes, there they all are. Yay. So we've got Jennifer and Caitlin and Joan and Julia, and they are going to be cooking for you and also answering some questions about the farm. So they're going to each have their turn. But like I said, if you've got questions for them, please feel free to stick them in the chat and we will answer them as we go. They are ready to cook for you and ready to answer your questions. Before we get to our first farmer, we have a question for you. So because we like things to be interactive and fun, we have a poll question for you. So our first poll question, I see you shaking your face. I see it, is what's your favorite? Appetizers or cocktails? Are you like, pass the food, please? Or are you always prepared? Cheers, drink in your hand. Or are you thinking, I mean, I've got 2 hands, right? Give me both. Which is your favorite? Oh, we've got lots of food and lots of both. Yes, lots of food and lots of both. Oh, it's changing. I don't know if you can see the progress, but we always want to know what's your favorite, because we've got all of these covered tonight, no matter which one is your favorite. Okay, it looks like our winner at the moment. I don't know, do I get to stop the poll? I don't know what kind of power I have. Okay, there it is. Oh, by a hair. I have two hands. We want both. Yes, I love it. Drinks and good appetizers. That is what we're going to have tonight. So our first farmer is, we're going to move up to Nebraska, and she is going to cook some delicious things for us. So first, before you cook for us, Joan, can you tell us a little bit about who you are and your farm operation, your family and your farm?
Hi, good evening, everyone. Happy to spend this evening with you and share a beef recipe appetizer. Yeah, Steve and I live on a farm in northeast Nebraska. We've been married for almost 40 years, and we bought our farm from his uncle. That means this farm has been in the Ruskamp family for over 100 years. In Nebraska, we have the soil and the climate to grow row crops like corn and soybeans really well. And so that is what we do. Our main focus, though, is on a finishing phase of cattle. And what that means is we buy cattle from places that grow grass really well. We bring them to our farm where we have grains as an added ingredient, and we put them in that finishing phase before they become beef. I'm a veterinary technician by degree, and so it fits in nicely with the animal and healthcare. We also raise 5 children. They're adults now. 4 of them are married, and they were kind of spread out all over the country. And they have blessed us with 8 grandchildren.
Wow. So you're telling me there's really hope for my 4 kids.
Yes.
That's what I'm hearing. That is wonderful. Okay, so one of the things I know about my teenage boys is that they're going to eat all the things, and they don't always care what it is. But I feel like these beef pinwheels will be delicious and nutritious. So can you tell us what we need to get together?
Sure.
For beef
and
pinwheels?
I found this recipe on the Beef It's What's for Dinner website. And you can go to CommonGround for lots of recipes, but when it comes to just beef, it's a great resource for everything beef. And in this recipe, you're going to use pre-made roast beef. Hormel is one particular company that makes it, but there's quite a few out there. And in the recipe, it says 16 to 24 ounces. That's a pretty wide variety to put on your pinwheel. And so this one is 17, so it's somewhere in between. But it gives you some play with how much beef you want. You can also use leftover roast. If you make a pot roast for your family and you have leftover roast, cut that up into small sections, and you really want to flake it apart so it's not chunky. Then you're going to stir in some Asiago cheese. I also learned that if you buy it shredded, it's more fine than if you shred it yourself. And so just the difference in if you buy a wedge versus sliced. You're going to need puff pastry, and puff pastry is not like the pie shell. You know, we've all maybe cheated and bought a box of the pie shells to quick throw a pie together. This is puff pastry, so make sure you get the right one. It makes croissants, things like that. And I added a little bit of garlic salt because I like the flavor of garlic. I like a little more salt. It's not in the recipe, but I choose to add it.
I firmly believe you measure garlic with your heart. So I say add it.
Yep. And this pastry sheet is really big, but what you do is cut it so that it measures about 4 by 10 inches. So it's a long, narrow rectangle. And then you're going to take the mixture of your roast beef, the Asiago cheese, and then, of course, my garlic salt. And you're going to put it on the pastry sheet. You want to make sure you stay a ½ inch away from the edge closest to you, and you just kind of spread it apart. When I was preparing my sample to show later, I got a little overzealous with the beef. And so you can't see the dough as well. So if you really want to see that pinwheel, you're not going to want to put quite as much beef. You want to really spread it out with your fingers. Kids love doing this kind of thing, right? Just getting in there and spreading that all out. But a fork actually really helps. It's about 3/8 of a cup when you measure the whole amount, like a 17-ounce serving. And then buy some green onions and cut the tops in half, and then slice them in real thin slices. You just lay them on your roast beef in little layers here. And roast beef is kind of one of the go-to comfort foods for our family and a lot of families. I grew up eating pot roast. Sunday pot roast was pretty common. And then you're going to just pick up that edge away from you and flip it over, and then kind of press down so that seam is in there. You'll see I have a little flour. If it doesn't want to stay together, you can put a little bit of water along that seam to really make that seam stay there. I've used a bread knife, or a very sharp paring knife also works really well, because you're slicing through roast beef, right? Mm-hmm. And you're going to take your fingers and put that knife between two of them. This is not a job I would give a child. I think this is something mom needs to do. But you're just going to go along and you kind of hold that together as you're slicing. And I have a little piece there. And you just kind of go along and you cut the pinwheels. And then you're going to lay them on parchment paper. And there's 4 of these like log shapes, I guess you'd say, that you're going to make. And so there will be plenty of pinwheels for everybody. And as you go along, you just cut and slice.
So before you got there, I have a question for you. So when I have bought puff pastry in the past, it's usually like in the frozen section. Do you need to defrost it before I put it out on that cutting board? Or kind of get it to room temperature?
This pastry was in the refrigerated section. You can look by yogurt or butter, or it depends on what store you shop at.
Yeah.
And the people who work there don't always know either what you're looking for, because a lot of them want to take you to pie pastry.
Right.
Because I think so many people buy the pie pastry when they go to the grocery. So
we're definitely looking for puff pastry. Puff.
Yes.
If you've watched the Great British Bake Off, they say rough puff, but we're just going to buy it in the store.
Yeah.
So, and then the other thing is that you made the green onions, you sliced them kind of like julienne, like long, not like the little circles.
Right.
Okay.
And then as you're cutting them, they're going to be cut into shorter pieces, right?
All right.
And so I'm just placing, yep.
No, I was going to ask you, while you're cutting, I can imagine that you're kind of picky about your beef if you are finishing off cattle. Thank you for allowing us to buy it pre-made in the store. That's really helpful. But can you tell us a little bit about, I mean, you've said you bring these animals to your farm. How do you care for them? I think as a mom, we hear this kind of stuff about animal welfare out in the world, and I don't really know what it means. So I didn't actually know that you were a vet tech, even though I've talked to you before, Joan. I didn't know that. And so tell us a little bit how you make sure your animals are okay.
I think the easiest way to think of it would be comfort care. A lot of us are familiar with, on the human side, comfort care, when we want to make sure people are comfortable. As a mom, I think we want to make sure our kids are comfortable. And how do we do that? The way we feed them, the way we nourish them, body, mind, and spirit. Well, when it comes to cattle, they have 4 basic needs. They're pretty amazing creatures. They need fresh water. They need a good diet. They need the ability to socialize. And they like to be able to lay down and rest.
They really are like teenage boys.
They are, yes. They're like a lot of us, right? And you can offer those comforts anywhere, whether they're on a big pasture eating grass or when they're in a feedlot like ours on dirt. They're very basic needs that, and we use things like research to help drive us, a nutritionist that works with this, a veterinary team. We use all of these people and the research that continues to evolve and how to best meet all those needs. And part of that is using what we grow best where we live. People who grow grass really well can raise that calf up and keep raising a calf every year. And then that calf can come to our farm where we grow grain really well and feed and provide that really healthy, tasty beef that we love.
I love it. That's so nice. I mean, I think because I keep a cat alive. and children. So I don't really know, thinking about how you care for animals, it's helpful to relate the idea of animal welfare to comfort care. Like, what do they need to be comfortable? And those ideas of, fresh water and socialization and rest and a good diet. That's really helpful to just think about, okay, I can trust that the animals that I'm eating beforehand were well cared for, and knowing that you've got this team of people that are really helping them.
Yeah.
So go ahead.
And our goal here is to help them thrive. For people who have livestock, it's not about allowing them to just survive from day to day. We want them to thrive every day. And so, like, when we were raising our kids and now our grandchildren, it's not enough to be okay. We want you to be great. And so that's kind of the theory behind everything we do in bringing animals up for food use. We want them to be great.
That's really good to know. That's just, it's just really helpful to think about. It's not just about raising them up. It's making them thrive in the way that you care for them. That's really, really helpful. So as thriving as they are, I really do love the taste of them in my little mouth. So as you've put this beef pinwheels on your parchment paper, how long, we put them in the oven and for how long?
Yep. The recipe calls for 400. I have better luck at 375, or they get a little more done underneath. And so it might just be my oven. And I would go 17 minutes at that temperature, or you can maybe go 15 at 400. You might have to try one or two first and see how you like it. But yeah, I have these ready to go, and I'm going to go ahead and pop them in my oven. So later tonight, we can see how these compare to the other ones I made.
Oh yeah, let's see the finished delicious product. I want to see what that looks like.
Yes, because I'm going to show you that I did get overzealous with my beef. You can hardly see the pastry in the pinwheel. But I think the other thing I've noticed with my grandchildren is they love dipping. They're always dipping their food in everything. And I don't have the recipes right in front of everyone tonight, but if you know how to make a honey mustard sauce, you could make a honey mustard sauce and maybe put a little bit on. You could get a squirt bottle and make a nice little design if you wanted.
Oh, you're fancy.
Also, cranberries. There's flavors that go together and bring out more flavor, right? And so we know mustard and beef cranberry. And so you can have fun with the holidays and maybe drizzle a little bit of cranberry sauce too, but you can have fun with them. You can maybe have a sauce bar and let people choose what sauce they want to.
Oh, that's fun. I never thought about cranberry, because I don't know about y'all's houses, but the first condiment happening in my house is always ranch. So right. I like expanding the palettes a little bit. So
you can just set that ranch bottle right next to it.
Oh, I mean, I can, but I like the idea of giving them some variety. A sauce bar sounds really fun. Oh, Joan, thank you so much. That looks so delicious. I'm excited to try this recipe. And thank you for the tips, not to get overzealous with the beef. That's really good to know. And some of those rolling techniques. So thank you for sharing about your farm. Don't forget, friends, if you've got questions, when do you use the Asiago while we're still on this recipe?
Okay, you stir it in with your roast beef right away. And so first you break the roast beef into small pieces and really break it apart with a couple of forks. Stir in that Asiago, and if you want to add any other seasoning like garlic salt, about a half a teaspoon, then you're gonna mix all that together and then put that on your pastry.
Awesome. I love these ideas that are coming in the chat, which reminds me, if you've got questions as we're happening, please feel free to throw them in the chat. If we can't answer them just during each farmer, we'll definitely have time during the Q&A right before the giveaway. I'm very excited about the giveaway. So we are going to move from Nebraska down to Texas and to our next farmer. So Julia is waiting for us. So Julia, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your farm?
Absolutely. Well, welcome to my kitchen. I am in North Texas, at the very top of the Panhandle in a town called Dalhart, Texas. And I farm there with my husband, Russell, and our 4-year-old son. Russell is a 5th generation farmer in this area, and my son Whitaker is so enthusiastic about everything farming, and so we might have the 6th generation on our hands.
That's
We grow,
amazing.
yes, we grow mostly corn and cotton. Right now we are grazing cattle on our wheat pastures, and so they are the cows that are, we get them young and they're raising up and they'll go to a feedlot next. So we're the step before Joan. And then we are also really passionate about homesteading. So we have a huge garden, pigs, chickens, and just for fun, we have a charity coffee roasting company on the side.
Just for fun, kicks and grins. Well, that sounds super busy. So it feels like you've got a lot of fun things to choose from to make for us tonight. So what fun, scrumbly, delicious thing are you making?
So I chose to make a chimichurri sauce, and it is made with herbs from my garden. And some from the grocery store because it's cold and a lot of my herbs died, but some of them are from my garden.
No shame, no shame here.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I'm serving it with a coffee rubbed steak kebab. And then I also did a veggie version that has pineapple, sweet potatoes, bell peppers, and onions. And so chimichurri is a great sauce. It's mostly herbs, and so it's a really fresh flavor. Definitely packs a punch, and you can put it on like literally anything. It's great on grilled chicken, shrimp, potatoes, anything you want, really.
This is exciting. So tell me, what do we need to have together? What kind of herbs? To walk us through the beginning of this recipe.
Okay, so traditionally it's usually parsley, and that's flat leaf parsley, not the curly parsley. They have very different textures. I find that parsley has a really strong flavor, especially if you're growing it fresh. And so I like to balance it out with cilantro. So I do mostly parsley, a little bit of cilantro, shallots, chives, oregano, add some olive oil, some vinegar, some salt, some red pepper flakes, mix it together, and you're done. So the biggest amount of work is the chopping. After that, you just have to mix it and you're ready to go. So,
okay.
Yeah.
So what do you mix it in? What are we mixing it in?
So we're mixing it directly in the bowl that I'm going to serve it in.
Okay.
So I have some stuff. I pre-chopped everything just so I wasn't sitting here chopping forever.
Listen, you're on a food show. You get to be the fancy pre-chopper.
Well, and I will say, like, it's really tempting to use a food processor to make the chopping go a little faster. And that does change the texture a bit. And so if you do use a food processor, definitely pulse it instead of pureeing it. I'm a big fan of the herb mill. It makes things super easy. I have cilantro in here right now, and so I'll show you. You just you put the herbs in, turn it, and it like chops it for you. It's amazing.
Okay, wait. So can Whitaker do that? Because I feel like if he can
do that.
Yes. Every child in my house can make that happen.
He literally did this for me. I was pre-prepping everything, and he's like, "Mom, I want to help," and so he did this. So
I love it. Let's give them jobs. I'm all about
absolutely. that. So we have parsley that's going in, the cilantro that's going in. We have 3 tablespoons of shallots. And so if your grocery store doesn't have shallots, you can use garlic as a substitute. I like shallots. I think they're a little more mild and kind of has a little bit of a hint of onion, but either one works great.
So if I'm looking in the grocery store, where do I find shallots and what do they look like?
They're usually next to the garlic, and they're purple. They look like giant cloves of garlic that are purple.
Okay. I can imagine that kind of that shape.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And so usually it'll come with like 2 cloves of shallot that are like, this big. So, and then I have chives and oregano. Like I said, I don't have oregano in my garden, so I just used dried oregano for that. The chives are from my garden. I grow garlic chives. They're my favorite, but like regular chives work great also. So, you can, for the chives and the oregano, you can use dried if that's what you have, but the cilantro and parsley, you definitely need to use fresh.
Okay.
For this recipe.
I've seen that. I love cilantro. And so I always buy it like it's next to the parsley and the celery and that kind of, that's what you're talking about. That's the fresh that you need. Okay.
Yeah. So this is my cilantro that I didn't use. And so it comes in a huge bouquet.
It's usually like a huge thing for like $1.50.
Exactly. Yeah. So, And then mix that. I have half a cup of olive oil. We'll do 3 tablespoons of red wine vinegar. You can do regular vinegar if you want. I really like the flavor of red wine vinegar. So mix that in there. And this is all to taste. And so if you like things more tangy, you can add extra. If you like things more garlicky, add extra. It's totally up to you.
Okay.
Salt. And then red pepper flakes. And these are red peppers that we grew in our garden and dried out and put into a pepper mill.
Okay, I'm gonna buy mine at Aldi, but okay.
Yeah. It's the same thing.
Okay, great. But you made it from your garden. It sounds very cool. I'm struggling to make sure that my rosemary stays alive.
Yeah, absolutely. Then you just stir together. It's something that needs to sit for at least 10 minutes before you eat it so that the flavors can all mingle together. And if you're having like a little cocktail party or something like that, having your little Corona pod over or whatever, you can make it in the morning. Like it'll last for about 8 hours.
Okay, that's good to know. So if I've got people coming over in my little Corona pod, or just I want to sit with my kids and we're doing a dip night, I need to start we're having dinner at 6. I can still make it in the morning around lunch. Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Or again, assign it to them.
3, so we're good.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And then, so you're serving that with, you said some vegetables, you've got some peppers and something else. I don't remember.
So I did coffee and ancho chili rubbed steak kebabs. Since I have the coffee roasting company, we like to incorporate coffee in our celebrations if we can. And so like if you were eating this, you would just get your kebab and then drizzle the sauce over it. So that's the meat version. And then I also have a vegetarian version that has pineapple, peppers, red onions, sweet potatoes. So, but literally whatever you have in your kitchen, you can throw it on a kebab stick and put some chimichurri on it and it'll be fantastic.
And that's perfect for like Corona times too. You could like have little individual pods of chimichurri and your own little stick and everything is fantastic. Nobody touches.
Yes.
Yes, I like it.
Yeah. And I love that it's like a complete meal. You have your protein, you have your veggies. It's all done in one.
All done, and I do like all done in one. So I love that you've got all these different components to your farm, and you've got you've got your garden, and you have the pastures and I think you said row crops, right? Am I saying that right? So you have all of these different pieces, and we're talking to Joan about animal welfare because that's one of those things that I hear all the time. And one of the other things that I just constantly feels like it's in the water is this word sustainability. And it feels a little bit like the scene from The Princess Bride where everybody's like, I don't think that word means what you think it means. And because it just doesn't, we don't really know what it means. And I feel like you've got something to share with us about sustainability, being a farmer. So can you tell us a little bit about sustainability and what that means to you and your farm?
Yeah, absolutely. So funny story, when I first met my husband, I was a vegetarian, and it was specifically because I didn't think it was sustainable for our country to grow corn to feed to animals and to lose that energy in the food chain. And then it turned out that's exactly what his family does. So
this feels like this might have been a problem.
So I had a very transformative journey learning about sustainability, learning about agriculture, learning about our food systems. And so like I definitely understand not quite knowing what sustainability means. And I've come to learn that there's really a triangle of factors that determine sustainability. And so the like easy, catchy way to remember it is plant, people, and profit. But so plant would really be anything that's related to the environment. And so it includes your water, any sort of emissions, your local ecosystem, and making decisions that don't negatively impact those things around you. In our area, water is our scarcest resource. And so many of our decisions are based on not depleting our aquifer, and making farming decisions that are good for our climate and our environment. The next part of the triangle is people. And so that would be our laborers, the people who work on the farm. And so it's having good working conditions for them, good work-life balance, making sure that they're healthy and have a fair wage. And then the last part of the triangle is profit or any sort of economic factors. And so, obviously as a business, we have to cover all of our expenses and make sure that we can continue to the next season. And then like all of our market decisions, whether we're direct to a consumer or if we're trading to a grain bin or something like that.
Oh, I've never heard about that, of like plant, people, and profit. That is a simple way to make sure that all of those, it's not just one of those things, it's all of them working together, and
absolutely
making sure your people have a fair wage, and that what grows where you live. Like we think about eating seasonally. I don't think I've ever thought about planting for where you live. And that just makes so much sense. So thank you for sharing that with us. And what a fascinating journey. I mean, like to know that much about sustainability and then to learn so much more and about what's really happening. And thank you for teaching me. And so things that you can grow that you've made for us tonight, those are so cool. Like some of that comes from your garden, but I also heard that you have like a fancy drink for us. So what is the next thing you're going to show us?
Okay, it's a Christmas punch. And so the piece de resistance is a festive ice ring. And so you make it in a bundt cake like this, a bundt cake pan. And you just fill it up with a little bit of water, and then you can put cranberries or lemons and limes, oranges, herbs, and you just do layers up the cranberry or up the cake pan, and you freeze it, each layer. Hopefully this will come out.
Oh my gosh!
And then you get a festive ice ring to put in your punch bowl. And so I did cranberries, lemons, limes, and then I also have some rosemary in there. And it just floats in your punch bowl. And it's like super pretty, but then also as it melts, you have the fruit floating in there, and it's kind of like sangria-ish.
Oh, Julia, you fancy. Like that's really fun.
Super easy, but it impresses people. So
clearly.
It is something that if you're having it at a specific time, you do have to start 24 hours in advance, just because you have to do the layers of freezing. So like all together, like each layer takes, a minute to do, but you do have to give time to freeze each layer.
Okay. So you put a little bit of water in, you stick it in your freezer, and then a couple hours later, you pull it back out, you arrange the fruit, put some water, stick it in your freezer.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so that's
and distilled water works a little bit better. It'll be a little less cloudy, but if you just have tap water, that works also.
Okay, distilled water for like primo, but your tap water works fine. Okay,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what lovely drink are we going to put with this?
Okay, so you have cranberry juice and orange juice, and I pre-measured again. It's 4 cups of each. Pour that right in. And just like regular old like cranberry cocktail works totally fine. Like you don't have to get the super.
I don't have to get the fancy jar that's like $8 of freshly squeezed cranberries. Okay.
24 ounces of ginger ale. And this is a punch that kids love if you leave out the alcohol. And so I will often serve it just like this and let people decide if they want to put the alcohol in or not. And once I put this in, I'm going to get a little out because I know my 4-year-old in there is going to want some. And then add some lime juice.
Oh, with your freshly squeezed lime juice. Can I just grab, like the little lime that you buy?
100%.
It's like this big.
Yeah, totally.
Okay.
And then you just kind of stir it together, and that's the base of your punch. Get out a little for the 4-year-old.
It's like they smell it. They're like, oh, you've made something for me.
And like I'm actually surprised he's not running in here to get some. All right, and then a bottle of champagne for the adults. So,
I love bubbles.
Absolutely. And there's nothing more like holiday and festive than champagne, right?
Yes.
Hope I can open it.
Do you need a sword? Like, you know, the...
I've never ever done that or like popped the bottle off. I can't do that. I'm not that fancy.
I'm not either. My dad was a Marine, and so I have seen a few contests from some Marines trying to sword the champagne. Oh, it even sounds fun. I do just really genuinely like bubbles. Sparkling water is one of my favorite things. So champagne sounds great.
And then the last ingredient is about half a cup or a cup of bourbon. And it is made with Texas corn. I'll show you the bottle. There's even corn on the label. So yay, corn farmers. And I really like to add this, especially at the holidays, because it just adds like a warmth and a depth to the drink that makes it really festive and great for this time of year. So that's your punch. Easy peasy.
That's great. Okay, so now if because I only have 2 people in my house that are allowed to drink alcohol, what if we wanted to make a smaller batch? Could you give us some guidelines about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the main thing is the champagne. You're going to have to open an entire bottle.
I'm not sure if that part's the problem.
Right. But ultimately, it's just 1 part orange juice, 1 part cranberry juice, half a part of ginger ale. And like altogether, that should be half your glass. And then add a splash of bourbon and top the rest with champagne.
Okay, that sounds doable. And then can I make a couple glasses and like just put it in a little pitcher? I mean, I'm not going to make a mini fancy ice thing for that, but just to make.
I usually, when it's just like for my family, I'll just make it in a pitcher about this size. And I'll often, like I said, I'll just mix all of the juices and the ginger ale. And so that way I can include my son. And then my husband and I can just add if we want to. So
that is fantastic. What an easy, like super fancy trick. I'm super excited about that. And I may just show up at my next party with, I feel like I can make it seasonal for any season, but the cranberries look so pretty.
They
like
do.
That's really,
you can
really
make
fun.
grapes or something and you'd still have the color and it'd be great for summer. So there's lots of options.
Yes, that is really fun. We thank you so much for sharing these recipes with us and your sustainability story. I mean, that's just really such an interesting journey and for teaching us about what sustainability is. So thank you, Julia, for sharing that.
Thank you. Yeah.
Well, before we move on to our next farmer, couple housekeeping things. If you've joined us late, no problem. Always be fashionably late. It's not a big deal. If you're curious why you're a panelist, it's just so you can turn your camera on. We'd love to see you. It doesn't matter if you're in your kitchen or if you're in your living room, that is no problem. We are going to ask you another question. So our second poll question is, where do you think most of your food in the grocery store comes from? So you have no idea, you've never thought about it before. Probably some other state in the United States, overseas somewhere, or you think I shop at farmers markets when I can, so I know that it's local. We'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So where do you think your food is coming from? Oh, we've got lots of answers. Ooh, one is a really strong winner right now. I can't tell if you can see the results as they come in, so I feel like I'm just giving you teasers here. Okay, all right, so most of you voted. Most people are thinking that it probably comes from some other state in the United States. Okay, well, we're gonna move from the middle of America to the East Coast, and we're going to Maryland to talk to another Jennifer. Jennifer Cross is in Maryland, and she is gonna tell us a little bit about her and her farm. So nice to meet you, Jennifer. Tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Jen. As Jen said, my name is Jennifer Cross, so welcome to my home and my kitchen. I live here in Maryland, and I'm just outside of the nation's capital, a long stone throw. I married my high school sweetheart almost 30 years ago, and we have 2 young adult children, both boy and a girl. We're fortunate to have them living with us here on the farm. They both contribute to the farm, but they've also kind of doing their own thing. So it's kind of a 50-50. Our son is following his passion and gone into the fire department in Alexandria, Virginia. And our daughter is still studying to be a registered nurse. She's kind of specialty in the dietitian part of it. So I know that'll definitely play a factor in her adult life. So my husband, Mike, was a tobacco farmer until his family transitioned to grow soybeans and corn. And for 93 years, they have owned and operated a farm, home and garden store that's located right here on the family farm. So that's a little bit about me and our farm and my children and husband. So I'm excited because I'm going to make our famous Maryland crab cakes for you all tonight. And you know, the Maryland blue crabs, right? So the Maryland group has, it's kind of like these things are a pride and joy for us, and you know, for good reason, because these famous little sea dwellers really are just so tasty and delicious. And you know, I have memories of with my family going out on our boat and crabbing for these, either in a crab trap, or you know, we would go along with the string and crab necks and scoop them right out. They kind of are in brackish water, but it's loads of fun. And then, you know, it's something that they run from kind of June to August, the hotter months. You can get them before and after. It just depends on the crazy Maryland weather. But they're loads of fun, and they're loads of fun also to eat. So I don't have any live crabs to show you, but I do have, of course, lump and back fin crab meat to make these crab cakes.
Okay, so I'm in Missouri, which I have said before. So we do fly fishing. I don't like fly fish for crabs. And when I go to the store, does it matter if it's canned, if it's frozen? Do I get it fresh at the seafood counter? And what am I asking for if I go to the seafood counter?
Well, I always say fresh is best, but
okay.
You know, we are so fortunate that, you know, pretty much any grocery store you go to, if they don't have it fresh, you know, they'll have it frozen, or they'll have it in cans, and they're all safe and they're all delicious. You know, of course, if you get it frozen, you're going to want to let it defrost. Okay. I always say with seafood, at least my family, what we don't eat the day it's prepared, if it's not eaten the next day, then we throw it out, just as a precaution. Truthfully, most seafood that we bring in the house doesn't get left over for 2 days, but
yeah, not here either.
But no, it's completely safe. And it really just depends. You know, when you're out at a restaurant, normally you're going to get lump crab meat, which is mainly the body of the crab that's lumped together. You know, sometimes they call it jumbo lump. But that's mainly what you're getting. I actually have a combination. I had picked these crabs fresh that we had gotten, not necessarily local to Maryland, because we are having some colder. They were a little bit further south than us now, but fresh, steamed, cooked, and picked them. And then I froze them to have it ready, defrosted it and have it ready for tonight.
Awesome. Okay, so what other things together do we need to make a real Maryland crab cake?
Okay, so this is my great-grandmother's recipe. My grandmother's made it, and my mother, and I'm fortunate enough that I was able to cook with all of them. And I think my mother's even on tonight, so I hope she approves of this. But you're going to take 2 slices of bread, cut the crust off, and then just cut them small. I do want to say you want to make sure the bread does not get to be where it's a crouton. You want it fresh, you know, moist, pliable. So just put that in. Then you're going to add 2 tablespoons of mayonnaise to that. You're going to add Old Bay seasoning and got 2 teaspoons Old Bay, 2 teaspoons of parsley. You can do fresh or dried. Again, both going to taste great. And this is a half a teaspoon of prepared yellow mustard. I actually have some of the spicy brown and Dijon in here because we like them both. And then I've beaten one this is a large egg. And I also just put in a tiny bit of lemon juice into that. And you want to mix that really good. And again, you want to definitely get your bread to where it's incorporated it in there. Don't worry if you're kind of mushing that together. But really get that mixed well.
So Jennifer, we had a question. If you're having a hard time finding Old Bay seasoning, that's such a super specific type of seasoning. I know in my grocery, sometimes it moves from like the seafood counter to the spice counter, but is there a good substitute for Old Bay? I know that's like sacrilege to ask somebody from Maryland, but do you have a suggestion for us?
I guess years ago I was in New Orleans, and I think years ago they didn't have Old Bay selling throughout the United States. And of course, I think they don't approve of Old Bay seasoning. But in the house we were at, I took seasoning, salt, garlic, black pepper, salt. I kind of made my own. I'm not sure if that's right, but the food turned out good that night, so nobody complained.
Okay.
But, nowadays, I think you can find Old Bay in just about anywhere. We were in California this year, and we purchased it in a local grocery store, similar to our Safeway here. I can't remember what they called it there on the West Coast, but
Okay.
so I'm sure it's moved around. You can get it just about anywhere now.
Okay. Well, that's really helpful. So after we've put this all together, now we're adding the crab.
You're going to add a pound of the lump and back fin crab meat, or if you just have the back fin, that's fine too. I will say when you buy the lump crab meat that's in a container, possibly even frozen, that normally does not have a lot of shells or very little. The mixed back fin, and usually there's about a $10 to $12 difference. It's still delicious, but the back fin that you might buy that's less expensive, you're going to find more shells or cartilage. So that's completely up to you. It's kind of the same meat. It might just not be lumped together. So now that you've got that, you want to incorporate that all together. And I don't normally mix it too much because I don't want to break down that crab meat, but I have a 3 tablespoon scooper, and that's what I do. For the appetizers, you can make them smaller depending on how many people, or if you're having it more like a dinner, you can make them into larger crab cakes. So it's completely up to you. I've got some already made.
So I have, because I'm a lover of fractions, which is the stupidest love in the world, but I do love them. So 1/8 of a cup is that 2 tablespoon. Often that's the coffee scoop size. And like 1/4 of a cup is 4 tablespoons. So you're saying somewhere in between those two fractions work well for the crab cake size, 2, 3, or 4 tablespoons.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Again, all depends on what you want to serve. Some people use a larger scoop if they're having less people and they want it to be more filling.
Okay.
So we just pop that in the oven, and since did a little preparing, so you want to set your oven to broil. You can fry these. I grew up broiling them, and you can set it on high or low. And again, it just depends on what you prefer in your oven. So, if you're doing it on high, about 8 to 10 minutes, and I'd watch it. You just want it to get nicely brown. And of course, if it's larger or thicker, I would suggest going to that low broil, letting it go a little bit longer. But then you have these beautiful, tasty little crab cakes. And then I've got a tray here.
Oh, those look so good. I just want to reiterate a little bit of something that you said that would be a downfall for me, is that you want to watch it. So this is not something you like set the oven and then go do something else and get distracted. This we want to pay attention to, is what you're saying?
At least the first or second time you make them, yes.
You're like, I'm an expert, I can walk away.
Timer and I walk away because I kind of feel like I'm more comfortable with it. But yes, if it's your first time, definitely till you're comfortable. The last thing you want to do is overcook them or burn them.
Okay. Yeah, that doesn't sound good. Well, I love that this recipe is something that your family has, just connected over the years. That's really cool. Those family recipes are so important. And I haven't lived on a farm for several generations. And so it's so interesting that your family has done this type of work for so long. And you have this store. And does the store also serve like big corporate farms and like large farm businesses, or is it more for the small businesses around you?
Okay, well, the store that my husband's family has had in his family now 93 years, that really serves the community. And over those 93 years, it served the community in different ways. It is a garden store, a farm store, a home store. So of course, years ago, it started out with, seed fertilizer because there were a lot more farms at that time. And the family has had to transition over the years. So now they're doing building material to provide equestrian buildings, tasting room for vineyards, just your regular barns. But, we do sell all types of products, spices, plants, seeds. We're still there for the community. So the store is there for the community. Now, our corn and soybeans that we grow, we do distribute that gets sold to a local, actually a large enterprise ag business on the Eastern Shore. So they take our feed, what we call feed corn. It's feed corn versus sweet corn. And that gets sold to them, and they either use it in their feed, or some of it does get exported. It just depends on their need.
Oh, interesting. One of the things, we keep talking about the things that are kind of in the ether that cause moms guilt and a little bit of confusion. And one of them is this kind of idea of big farms or small farms. And I just feel a little bit guilty because I just don't understand, really. That's why I feel guilty about, if I go to my local grocery store, am I supporting this idea of a big corporate farm, or is that a family farm that's getting my support? Can you enlighten me a little bit about that?
Well, we're very fortunate in the United States because we really can go to the grocery stores and almost find products any month of the year. And products that are out of season. So in that aspect, we're very fortunate. In our local grocery stores here, a lot of the family farms, smaller farms, and the larger farms do contribute to those grocery stores, as well as products from other countries does get imported. But pretty much everything in there, or everything is safe. And again, we have just such an abundance of products to choose from 12 months out of the year.
Yeah. I guess so. The bottom line is what's in my local grocery store is probably from a farm around, and it's safe. So I don't have to worry if what I'm feeding my kids is something that's not good for them.
Yes. And I think more and more you're finding that there might be a card or some sort of description saying exactly where that farm is that product is coming from.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be 5 miles away, 25 or 50 miles away.
Yeah, I do see that when I'm at my Aldi. There's something that says, here's where that comes from. So that's good to remember. That is good to remember. Well, thank you for sharing your wealth of knowledge with us and delicious crab cakes. I've never made crab cakes before, and now I feel a little bit more confident that it's actually very easy.
Great. I wish I could share them.
I do too. I'll just be right over and I'm going to swing by Texas and get that drink first.
Okay. Bring me one.
Right. So now we have another poll question for the rest of you. So here is what we'd like to know next. I've been asking these farmers about food. We'd like to know, where do you get your information about food? Do you get your information from friends? Do you get it from social media and other online resources? Do you ask the workers at the grocery store? Do you ask your doctors or nurses or nutritionists, other medical professionals? Or do you ask farmers? Where do you get your information about food from? Something's winning. We'll see how it goes. Just a few more seconds. And then, okay, looks like social media and other online sources. That's where you're getting your information about food. Well, we're really hoping that you ask questions tonight of our farmers. So don't forget, you can put in the chat any questions that you have about the dishes that they're making or just about food in general and about their farm. So we are going to travel back to the Midwest, to the great state of Missouri, and we are going to talk with Caitlin. Tell us a little bit about who you are and your farm.
Hey, welcome everybody. Welcome to Missouri and my kitchen. We are in mid-Missouri, so that's the Cooper County area, right in the center of the state. Mm-hmm. And my name is Caitlin. So my fiance and we farm in Cooper County, and on our farm we grow corn, soybeans, miscanthus, and wheat, and we also raise turkeys and cattle. And I also work off the farm. I'm an agronomist, which is I work with farmers to help them raise better crops, more healthier crops, and more crops on smaller pieces of land. And I work as an agronomist at an ag retail location.
Okay, so an agronomist is kind of like a nutrition coach for farmers, like making sure that you get the right amount of things so the plants grow well?
Yeah, essentially. So if there's a problem in the field, like there's a disease, or there could be a bug eating the plant, I step in and I help provide a solution on what they can do to help control that bug eating their corn plant or their soybean plant, so it doesn't kill the whole field, and they have a crop to produce, so we have food.
Okay, I like it. And so so in our house, we love anything on a board. So a charcuterie board, a cheese board, you put it on a board, it's suddenly fancy and we love it. So tell us what kind of board you're making for us tonight.
Sounds good. So I put together like a holiday dessert board, kind of like a charcuterie board, holiday dessert. So we have a bunch of different munchies, and I'm going to be preparing a gingerbread dip. I love gingerbread. I love nutmeg, molasses, ginger. So all of those good holiday Christmas feels. And on the board, what I have is I have a like gingerbread bread put together with some blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, grapes, and then some cheese to dip into the dip, or just good old old-fashioned graham crackers that work great in a dip also. You know, maybe a little more kid-friendly, but I wanted to put the fruit on there too for a healthier option, just so we have.
And it's so pretty.
Variety.
It's so pretty. I love it when fruit's on a board because it just makes things so colorful. Very fun. It's very fun. So tell us a little bit about what we need for this gingerbread dip.
Yeah, definitely. So to make the gingerbread dip, you'll just need a few household items. I'll go through the list. So first we have molasses that you'll need to get, three tablespoons of molasses, and then your confectious powder, powdered sugar. It's funny, my mom always called it confectious powder. I'm like, what is confectious powdered sugar? But, and then cinnamon, of course, and ginger, nutmeg, whole cloves, and brown sugar, something everybody loves, right? And then, of course, cream cheese. That's really the majority of the dip, and Cool Whip. And then at the end, after the dip is made and it's all stirred up, if you have little ones that love sprinkles, I highly recommend adding some sprinkles just for garnish.
Do you have to be a little one to love sprinkles? Because next to bubbles, sprinkles.
I should clarify. Anyone that loves sprinkles, add some holiday cheer to put some sprinkles on the dip.
Okay, so what do? We're just is it just like throw it all in there?
Yeah, it's super easy. So truly, we are just going to throw most of the ingredients in. We'll mix it and then we'll just fold in the whipped cream at the end. So it's important not to put the Cool Whip in at the beginning. I did that and it didn't mix real well. So we'll fold that in at the end.
Okay.
So first, I'm just going to start with some of the cream cheese. And I pre-measured everything beforehand because I wanted to be prepared so you guys don't have to watch me just measure into a bunch of.
Yes. My girls like to pre-measure things and pretend they're on the Great British Bake Off, like as a like a pre-show. Although this last season there was one that was really messy and they decided that was me. I was like, I'm not that messy. Y'all are the messy ones. What are you talking about?
Yeah, it's a great job for kids to be able to pre-measure and help out. So I'm going to add the brown sugar. I just put in the cream cheese and the molasses. Going to add in my brown sugar and then my confectious powder or my powdered sugar.
I love that confectious powder. It's
Mom would be
awesome.
proud. So then on the cinnamon, we use 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. And I like to go a little heavy on the cinnamon. I love cinnamon. I love spices. So just a little heavy hand on that.
All right.
So then the nutmeg, and you only need about 1/8 of a teaspoon of nutmeg. So just a little dab. And ginger, 1 teaspoon of ginger, which again, with the ginger, like the cinnamon, I add a little more just for flavor. And a pinch of whole cloves. And it's funny, you know, I found this recipe on Pinterest. So what a pinch of whole cloves to somebody could be different to another. So I just try to do it a little heavy just so you have extra spice.
Okay. Whole cloves, not ground.
I've bought the whole cloves and I've mixed them in. Yeah.
Okay.
And fine. Yeah. So we will go ahead and mix it.
Okay. It's going to be loud for half a second.
Yes.
Woo, here we go. All right. Yours is so nice and quiet. I feel like mine runs the whole board. I really enjoy seeing all the little sous chefs that are helping us here tonight. Some of them look like they're getting ready for bed, not doing as much cooking, but that's okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
I mixed it up, and now I'm going to add in the whipped cream. And it does say fold in the whipped cream where you would just more like stir it. But I'm going to go ahead and use my KitchenAid mixer just for time's sake. And
Okay.
it's a little less messy too that way.
And then you don't get folded in. Fold it in, if anybody is going to get that joke. So somebody is asking if you can use fresh whipping cream that you've like whipped up to be like whipped cream.
Oh, that sounds amazing. I think absolutely. That sounds delicious.
I like to substitute fresh whipped cream. Like I have to whip it up first. You can't just like pour it in. Somebody got the joke. So you can't just pour it in out of the container, but if you make whipped cream, then you can share it in.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. No, that sounds delicious. The fresh whipped cream. I just use the traditional Cool Whip from the grocery store, and I keep mine in my freezer, so just let it thaw out for a little bit, for a couple hours. And
that
so
was
we
my next question.
That what?
That was my next question. Thawed out because you need to mix it. Okay.
Yes, correct. So I've added it into my mixer. Okay, so, and I'm going to go ahead and mix this part up now.
So while you're mixing, I don't know if you can multitask, but I'm a little bit curious about when you're helping farmers and the work that you do on your farm with wheat and the fancy grass name that you said that I don't remember, and corn and soybeans, when you are making sure that bugs aren't eating those things, how are you helping farmers know what they need to combat those types of pests and they get a good crop?
Yeah, absolutely. So we're out checking crops, and I'm working with farmers, taking farmers out there to look at their crops. And I went to college to get a degree in agronomy, which means I've been trained to know different kinds of bugs and diseases and how they affect plants differently. But when we see a bug or a disease invading a crop and really hurting the farmer's livelihood, I provide them with a solution. Like, maybe we could spray a pesticide, like a herbicide, so we can control this. So, for example, like in wheat, talking about wheat in Missouri, we grow soft red winter wheat. And if we need to spray a herbicide to control all the weeds from growing up and killing our crop. And honestly, when you think about herbicides, they're really not that scary. If you think about the size of a football field, which is about an acre, a football or soccer field, the amount of pesticide we use to control the weeds on 1 acre is about equivalent to this cup. And that's all for a whole acre.
So usually like a coffee cup to a whole football pitch?
Yeah, this coffee cup right here, this would be about equivalent. And then we use water also. So when you see, a sprayer, that's really, most of it's just water coming out. This is all the herbicide we use, and that helps control all the weeds for about an acre on our wheat field.
That's really, and you help farmers like make the right recipe that goes in that coffee cup.
Right, yeah,
water.
the right recipe for it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting. I love that. I think I just didn't quite realize how many people help farmers grow their crops in the right way. You kind of think about in our mind, there's a red barn and a farmer and a little tractor, but there's really so many different aspects to what farmers need to grow a crop. So I can have delicious crackers.
Right, there's a lot of science and technology that goes into it. So we can grow more with less amount of land and using less resources too, because they don't want to break the bank using a bunch of resources. We got to use less inputs.
I love it. That's so interesting. Okay, so we're going to come back to your recipe. You've made this dip and we're going to put it in what? Just a bowl?
Just a bowl, just a regular bowl. And so I whipped it all together. And sometimes at the end, when I look at my dip, you can see, I'll turn my camera down. It doesn't look like it has enough cinnamon for me. It's not as gingerbread looky like a good ginger snap cookie. So sometimes I do go ahead and add just a little more cinnamon at the end just to give it a little more flavor. So,
little flair, little sprinkle, little cinnamon. It's all good.
That's right. I'm just going to mix it a little bit longer.
This looks
Perfect.
so good.
Thanks. And then at the end, we're just going to put it in a bowl, and then you have all these options to dip the gingerbread dip in with.
Oh, this sounds perfect for that like dessert movie night. We're all going to watch a Christmas movie. We've got a dessert board, so we feel fancy, and we've got some cocoa, and I think that's what we might do. And they're getting some fruit. I've tricked them into fruit.
Right. A lot of different options on what you want to use to dip. And the reason I chose crackers, just the good old traditional graham cracker. They're kid friendly. Everybody loves them. You can't go wrong with a graham cracker. But also to show, we grow wheat here on our farm, and in Missouri we grow soft red winter wheat. And just like there's a lot of different types of soda, you have Mountain Dew, Dr. Pepper, Sprite. There's different types of wheat all over the United States. And different types of wheat are grown depending on the climate in that area. So Missouri, soft red winter wheat is what we grow, and that goes to make crackers. And then our friends over to the west in Kansas, they grow hard winter wheat, and that goes to make like all-purpose flour. And it's just really cool how the different types of wheat we grow on our farms go to crackers.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so the kind that I'm going to go buy my 5 pounds of flour to make, cookies is coming from Kansas. And my crackers are coming here. That's really, I think Julia said that too, like where the different climates allow you to grow different types of crops. And I hadn't thought about that, but then that actually goes into different types of products that I need a different type of raw ingredient to make it what I want. Well, Caitlin, thank you for sharing your expertise and your agronomy science. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Your agronomy science with us and all of your great information about a little bit of like a latte cup. It's not a latte.
Right. That's exactly right. Just a little coffee cup. That's all it is. So
I do love a good pun.
You what?
I do love a good pun. It's not a latte. Well, thank you so much. We now have some time for questions. So if you've put questions in the chat, we have lots of time to answer. I do appreciate the people who are quoting David and David Rose in the chat. But you can also put questions in the chat and that you have for our farmers, and they may be for what it's not an organization, it's an operation. That's what you call a farm. An operation. You can ask them about their recipes, and you can ask them any other questions. So we're going to bring up all the farmers, and you can ask them anything that you like before we have, remember, my favorite thing, a giveaway. So one of the questions we got early on, this is for Julia about your punch. We wanted to know how long the punch lasts. So when can you, like, how soon in advance can you make the punch? Because it's got that fizzy aspect to it.
I mean, that's the big thing. Both the ginger ale and the champagne, the fizz starts to go away. And so I guess it depends on how picky you are.
How much you like the bubbles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so I mean, from a health perspective, it'll last for several days. But from an enjoyment perspective, I would make it right before you served it.
Okay. That makes sense. Could you make, I mean, you added lots of other things in there first, and then you added the bubbles. So conceivably you could move the juices, but you had orange juice, cranberry juice, and the squeeze of lime. You could have that.
Yeah, you could absolutely do that ahead of time, and then just add the ginger ale and the champagne whenever you're ready to serve.
Okay. All right. And if you like flat bubbles the next day, then it's not going to hurt you.
Yeah,
Just might not be as a little bit fizzy. So the next question is for Jennifer about the crabs. Can you tell us again about the different types of crab in the crab cakes? Those of us who are not as familiar with seafood, I think it went a little fast. So tell us the kind of crab that we need to get at the grocery.
Okay, so what I prepared tonight was the Maryland blue crab, or of course the blue crab. And again, it was the lump meat as well as kind of like the non-lumped body of the crab, that meat there. So it was a combination of both to make up the crab cakes that I have here.
Does it matter which kind we want? Does it matter? Does it matter which one we get?
Well, like I said, a lot of the restaurants now across the United States, they serve Maryland blue crabs, or blue crabs, I should say. Maybe not Maryland, but the blue crabs. But of course, on the West Coast, you're not going to get fresh, unless it's flown in, crabs. You know, they're going to have the Dungeness crabs, or different types of crabs that are, again, delicious. It's all white meat, but it is a different taste. The Maryland blue crabs have a sweet, succulent, snow white look about them. So, it's a preference. I grew up on the East Coast, so I love my Maryland blue crabs, but the West Coast has some terrific crab meat as well.
Okay, so we're looking for that kind of lump that's it, and whatever we're getting is easier. We just want to make sure that one that doesn't have all the cartilage in it, like that, we have to just be careful about that.
Right. So again, if you're buying it, whether it's in a can, whether you're getting it frozen, or if you're getting it fresh and picking it yourself, you do want to make sure that you pick the shells or the cartilage out of that before you prepare the crab cake.
Okay. And while we're on the crab cake, did you add an egg, or can you add an egg? And can you use panko breadcrumbs instead of the bread?
I did add an egg, and actually I had a little bit more meat. I ended up adding a second egg to it to form the crab cakes, and it kind of just bonds it together. And you had asked about panko breadcrumbs. I do not make my crab cakes with it because I like the fresh, soft bread. I don't see why you can't, and I know probably I've had them, and I'm sure restaurants where I've ordered them, they do use breadcrumbs. It's just the recipe that was handed down, and that like I said, I cooked along with my great grandmother, and mother, and we use just fresh, either white bread or sourdough bread without the crust. And again, it was soft.
Okay.
With the egg, adding the egg with the breadcrumbs is probably perfectly fine because it's all going to bind together.
Okay. I understand that feeling. You have a recipe that this is how your family does it, and somebody tries to substitute, and you're like, but wait, that's not it. I mean, I'm sure it works fine, but that's not it.
Well, you know, but we
You
need,
get
I
to
guess we need to all
experiment in your own
adapt. You know,
kitchen.
everybody's
That's
in different
right.
diets or following different things, and it's fine. So definitely
Totally.
experiment with what you want to use. If it's breadcrumbs, the panko, or regular breadcrumbs. And again, you may have to add more egg, another egg,
Okay.
because the breadcrumbs are going to be dry versus the
Mhm.
fresh bread.
Okay, that's a good point. So if you're going to use that drier panko style breadcrumb, check your moisture. You might need some more egg. So
Right.
that's
Yes.
really good. Joan, if you're making your own beef and you're not buying like the pre-prepared beef, can you tell us what, I think you might be muted, so you might have to unmute yourself. Sorry, you were all set up there. What cut of beef do you prefer? Like if you're making that roast, what kind of roast would you make
Sure.
that if you were doing from scratch?
Yep. If I'm going to pick a roast to make, I'm going to pick a chuck roast.
Okay.
Chuck comes from the front part of the animal, and so it's going to be a little more juicy, a little more tender than, say, something from the rump. And so I would go for a roast to go for that chuck roast. And again, if you're going to use it in something that you're pulling apart, people are used to doing like pull apart barbecue sandwiches.
Mhm.
I would, when you're cutting the roast, if you're going to make something like an appetizer, and you go against the grain, and for people who don't know, if you put a whole bunch of ropes together in a bundle, you slice across the end of the ropes. That's against the grain.
Okay.
Versus along the length of a rope. That would be with the grain. That's how you get more tenderness. You go against the grain. So if you picture like all my fingers here, I'm going to go this direction. Not with my fingers, but with
your fingers,
rope.
please not. But yes, but that makes
I
sense. So for cutting against the grain. Okay.
A lot of it's the muscle fiber, and so if a lot of people can image that as a lot of cords of rope, you're going against that, and cut them. If you're using it for an appetizer, cut them really close, like a 1/2 to 1/4 inch. Make them small pieces because they flake out better, and then they'll cut better for you in that pinwheel.
Yeah, and if you're thinking about, I'm imagining, I mean, you could use a fork and a knife. I can't imagine that my family is going to do that. That's going to be a full-on finger food. That'll make it chewing a little bit easier too. Those pieces are smaller. That makes sense. So now we have a question for anybody on your farms. Does anybody use regenerative farming? And if you do, can you also tell us what that is? Because I don't know. That's a question for any of the farmers who'd like to answer that question.
I think we could all do this if it's okay with you, if we all go, because regenerative farming is basically having farm practices that regenerate the soil, regenerate what we're doing so that the next year it's even better than it was the year before. And every farm is unique. My farm is not like the other 3 gals here tonight or the other hundreds of volunteers for CommonGround. My farm is not the same as the one 1/2 mile down the highway. And so we are unique, and we do different things to help us be sustainable and regenerative. And so it's really about using practices that help us take really good care of our soils, our land, and our animals.
Okay, so like you were saying, your area is really dry and Julia's area is really dry. They need to, so that's what you're looking for, is to make sure things stay in the soil and moisture stays in. Or somebody else where it's really wet, that's not their sustainability practice. So it has to match where you are. You
do, and we're plenty wet. We get plenty of moisture. And
I misunderstood.
That's okay. It's hard when you have so many different people and locations, and
I'm not a farmer. I am a city girl. I'm trying to understand.
Yep. Normally we can grow corn in this area without irrigating. Yeah. It's called dryland corn. Yeah. And Iowa would be similar to that, where you don't really need to irrigate. You get plenty of moisture. For us, that would mean using things like cover crops. When we harvest our corn, we put another crop in behind that we aren't necessarily going to harvest, but it regenerates the soil. Soil is alive, and so our other ladies too, they're doing different things to to be regenerative with their soil and the things that they're doing.
Okay. Well, I am going to pop out of that question to another question that for you, Joan, while we're still talking to you. Somebody asked in the chat about when buying beef, there's all these different label options. Can you tell us what a couple of those mean? Because I know when I'm standing in the grocery and I'm like, I don't totally know what those different things mean.
Sure. Nutritious wise, when you eat beef, you're getting a nutrient dense product. And so first of all, no matter what you buy, as far as the label reads, you're getting more than 50% of protein, and just like the size of the palm of your hand. It's very nutrient dense. Okay, aside from that, labels are really confusing. There's labels that have to do with tenderness. If you buy something that says prime or choice, you know that there's more fat in it, and so it's going to be more tender. If you buy something that's lean, like if you're buying 90% lean hamburger, there's going to be very little fat in it. It's going to be pretty dry. Might not make a patty really well because of that. You might read a label that says no added hormones, which means that that farmer did not utilize a resource we have to help us be better stewards of our feed. The hormones are like in all our bodies and all living things. And when we eat beef, whether that animal utilized a hormone to convert feed more efficiently or an animal that did not receive that, the amount difference in that piece of steak that you're going to eat is like a blade of grass in a hole. We'll go back to that football field that we used earlier. It's insignificant, and it's even more insignificant because our bodies don't use it.
Okay.
It's just important to, and CommonGround, find our CommonGround, the website, has label information. So if people have concerns about all kinds of food labels, it's a great resource to check out.
Oh, that's so good. And that kind of leads me to my next point. It's like, so you clearly have heard from Joan and Julia and Jennifer and Caitlin. They have a wealth of information, far more information than I will ever know about farming. And every time I talk to farmers, I always learn so much more about what it takes to produce our crop and how it is safe and healthy for my kids and for our family. And I just really appreciate the knowledge that they have. And CommonGround is really here for you to find out that information. So as Joan said, the Find Our CommonGround Now website is available, but it's also on the socials. And so Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, you can find CommonGround and they will be there to answer your questions. That's really what they volunteer for. They really want to help moms in particular get rid of the guilt that we have about not knowing enough about food.